All right. 1 Samuel 23. When David, verse 7, Saul was told that David had gone down to Keilah, and he said, God has delivered him into my hands. David imprisoned himself by entering a town with gates and bars, and Saul called up all his forces for battle to go down to Keilah and besiege it. David learned that Saul was plotting against him, and he said, bring me the ephod. David said, the Lord, the God of Israel, your servant, has heard definitely that Saul plans to come to Keilah and destroy the town on account of me. Will the citizens of Keilah surrender me to him? Will Saul come down as your servant has heard? The God of Israel, tell your servant. The Lord said to David, he will. And David again asked, will the citizens of Keilah surrender me and my men to Saul? The Lord answered, they will. So David said to his men, about 600 in number, David and his men left Keilah and moved from place to place. When Saul was told that David had escaped from Keilah, he did not go there. David stayed in the wilderness strongholds in the hills of the desert of Zipporah. Day after day, Saul searched for him, but God did not deliver David into his hands. While David was at Horesh in the desert of Ziph, he learned that Saul had come out to take his life. And Saul's son Jonathan went to David in Horesh and helped him find strength in God. Do not be afraid. My father Saul will not lay a hand on you. You will be king over Israel, and I will be second to you. Even my father Saul knows this. The two of them made a covenant before the Lord, and Jonathan went home, but David remained at Horesh. The Ziphites went to Saul at Gibeah and said, is not David hiding among us in the stronghold at Horesh in the hill of Hekala, south of Jishman? Now, your majesty, come down whenever it pleases you to do so, and you will be responsible for giving him into your hands. We will be. Saul replied, the Lord bless you and your concern for me. Get up and get more information. Find out where David usually goes and who has seen him there. They tell me he's very crafty. Find out all the hiding places he uses and come back and tell me with definite information. Then I will go with you. If he's in the area, I will track him down among all the clans in Judah. So they set out and went to Zipporah ahead of Saul. Now David and his men were in the desert of Moab in the Arabah, south of Jeshimon. Saul and his men began the search. Whenever David was told about it, he went down to the rock and stayed there in the desert of Moab. When Saul heard this, he went into the desert of Moab in pursuit of David. Saul was going along one side of the mountain, and David and his men were on the other side, hurrying to get away from Saul. As Saul and his forces were closing on David and his men to capture them, a messenger came to Saul and said, come quickly, the Philistines are raiding the land. Then Saul broke off his pursuit of David and went to meet the Philistines. That is why they call this place Selah Hamalach. And David went up from there and lived in the strongholds of En-Gedi. Chapter 24. After Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told, David is in the desert of En-Gedi. So Saul took 3,000 able young men from all Israel and set out to look for David and his men near the crags of the wild goats. He came to the sheep pens among the way, and a cave was there. Saul went in to relieve himself. David and his men were far back in the cave. The men said, look, there's Saul in the cave, this very cave. This is the day the Lord has spoke of, whenever he said he would give your enemies into your hands. To deal with as you wish. David crept up unnoticed and cut off a corner of Saul's robe. Afterward, David was actually conscience-stricken because he cut off the corner of the robe. He said to his men, the Lord forbids that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed. For Saul is still king. I shall not lay my hand on him, for he is the anointed of the Lord. With these words, David sharply rebuked his men and did not allow them to attack Saul, and Saul left the cave and went on his way. Then David went out of the cave and called to Saul and said, my lord the king. When Saul looked behind him, David bowed down and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. And he said to Saul, why do you listen when men say David is bent on harming you? This day you have seen with your very own eyes how the Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave. Some men urged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not lay my hand on the Lord's anointed, because he is chosen by God to be leader. See, My father, look at this piece of your robe in my hand. I cut off the corner of your robe, but I did not kill you. See that there is nothing in my hand to indicate that I am guilty of wrongdoing and rebellion. I have not wronged you, but you are hunting me down to take my life. May the Lord judge between you and me. May the Lord avenge the wrongs you have done to me, but my hand will not touch you. As the old saying goes, from evildoers come evil deeds, so my hand will not touch you. Against whom has the king of Israel come out? Who are you pursuing? I am a dead dog, a flea. May the Lord be our judge and decide between us. May he consider my cause and uphold it. May he vindicate me by delivering me from your hand. When David finished saying all these things, Saul asked him, Is that your voice, David, my son? And Saul wept aloud. You are more righteous than I am, he said. You have treated me well, but I treated you badly. You have just now told me about the good thing you did to me. The Lord did deliver me into your hands, but you did not kill me. When a man finds his enemy, does he let him go away unharmed? May the Lord reward you well for the way you have treated me today. I know that you will surely be king, and that your kingdom of Israel will be established in your hands. Now swear to me by the Lord that you will not kill off my descendants and wipe out my name from my father's family. So David gave his oath to Saul, and then Saul returned home, but David and his men went up to the stronghold to stay. Okay. Wow. Lots of lessons there on how to treat your enemies with mercy and grace. And when you do so, it teaches them how to repent, right? Romans 2:4 tells us it's the goodness of the Lord that leads people to repentance, right? God said, vengeance is mine. I will repay evil for evil. So when you have opportunity to do evil to your enemy and you're justified in it, show mercy and grace like King David did, and God will be on your side. The commentary says, as a fugitive, David stops in Nob because he needs food and weapons. Ahimelech the priest seems suspicious, and David lies to protect his own life. This is less like Rahab's lie to protect the spies and more like Abraham's lie that Sarah was his sister. It's about saving himself, not others. And it suggests that he doesn't believe God's promise to make him king. He breaks another law by eating the holy bread, which is only for priests. Ahimelech makes a concession here. It's people over process. And it's hard to know how to feel about it at the time. However, Jesus refers to this rule bending as a reminder that inherent is this law in the spirit of the law, which is that God values mercy over the law. Matthew 12:1-8. Doeg the Edomite is there too, probably as a prisoner of war. He watches closely, maybe thinking any information he gains can serve as his ticket to freedom. He sees David take Goliath's sword and flee to enemy's territory, Phillyville, to escape Saul. David meets Achish, the lord of the city of Gath, who recognizes him. David may have wanted to offer himself as a mercenary, but the Gath locals are suspicious of him, so he acts insane and flees back to Judah. He and his family live in a cave. Their lives may be at stake, too, because of him. He assembles the ragtag bunch of outcast followers, 400 men in distress and debt, bitter and discontent. They head east to Moab across the Jordan, and David drops his parents off. They're too old and unfit for life on the lam or the run. Moabites and Israelites are enemies, but David's great-grandmother Ruth was a Moabite, so he has roots in the land. Also, he and the Moabites now share a common enemy, which is Saul. He heads back west across the Jordan and stays at a stronghold in the desert until a prophet warns him to leave, and he moves to a forest. Saul gets suspicious that all his servants and troops have betrayed him. So Doeg the Edomite sees his opportunity to prove that he's no traitor, and he spills the beans. Saul summons Ahimelech the priest of Nob, and accuses him, but he pleads innocent and ignorant. Still, Saul orders Doeg to kill them all. And 85 priests die that day. Saul's army kills everyone in Nob too, including animals. But Ahimelech's son Abiathar escaped to fill in David. Tell him what happened. David pledges loyalty to him, and Abiathar becomes his priest for life. Meanwhile, Keilah and Judah is attacked by the Phillies. So David consults with God, who promises to grant victory. Saul gets word of David whereabouts and tries to chase him, but God gives David the inside scoop, so Saul can't find him. Next, David and his crew go into the wilderness of Zippah, and Jonathan shows up and acknowledges that both he and his father know David is Israel's next king. Meanwhile, some people from Zippah tipped Saul off that David is there. Saul heads that way, but as soon as David is within sight, Saul gets word that the Phillies have attacked, and he has to rush back to war. Foiled again, you never get what God won't give. You'll never get what God won't give you. Next thing, David moves to an oasis called En-Gedi. When Saul comes to find him, he brings 3,000 men. While David and his guys are in a cave, Saul comes in to relieve himself and go number 2. David's men quote God's promises as a reason for him to take him out. We don't usually actually see that God said these things to David, so it's possible they're inventing promises or misapplying something that they've heard. David wisely resists their words. He trusts in God and enables them to wait well. David cuts off part of Saul's robe, which lets him prove his intentions to Saul that he's innocent. David has no faith in the king, but he shows respect for the king's position and faith in God all at once. He trusts God's sovereignty over even the length of this wicked ruler's reign. He knows it will come to an end in God's perfect timing. Today's God shot. God has incredible timing. From a surprise attack by the Philistines that pulls Saul away at a last minute to Saul's need to relieve himself just as he approaches the very cave where David is hiding. Everything we see today was so perfectly timed out that it almost reads like choreography. David invites us into this dance with him in which he guides his kids, always making a way to fulfill his plans no matter what attacks the enemy has had in mind. He leads us so well. God does. And he is where the joy is. All right, guys. Thanks for joining today. We're about to go head out to the warming station at noon to go give lunch to some cold homeless people and hug them and pray over them and just tell them about Jesus through love and action. See y'all tomorrow. Love y'all guys. Bye. Bye. David at Nob, 1 Samuel 21. David went to Nob, to Ahimelech, the priest. Ahimelech trembled when he met him and said, why are you alone? Why is no one with you? David answered Ahimelech, the priest, the king sent me on a mission and said to me, no one is to know anything about the mission I'm sending you on. As for my men, I have told them to meet me at a certain place. Now then, what do you have on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread or whatever you can find. But the priest answered to David, I don't have any ordinary bread on hand. However, there is some consecrated bread here, provided the men have kept themselves from women. David replied, indeed, women have been kept from us, as usual whenever I set out. The men's bodies are holy, even on missions that are not holy. How much more so today? So the priest gave David the consecrated bread, since there was no bread except the bread of the presence that had been moved from before the Lord and replaced by hot bread on the day it was taken away. Now, one of Saul's servants was there that day, detained before the Lord. He was Doeg the Edomite, Saul's chief shepherd. David asked Ahimelech, don't you have a spear or sword here? I haven't brought my sword or any other weapon because the king's mission was urgent. The priest replied, The sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Eli, is here. It is wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you want it, take it. There is no sword here but that one. David said, there is none like it. Give it to me. That day David fled from Saul and went to Achish, king of Gath. But the servants of Achish said to him, isn't this David, the king of the land? Isn't he the one they sing about in their dances? Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s. David took these words to heart and was very much afraid of Achish, king of Gath. So he pretended to be insane in their presence. And while he was in their hands, he acted like a madman, making marks on the doors of the gate and letting saliva run down his beard. Achish said to his servants, look at the man. He is insane. Why did you bring him to me? Am I so short of madmen that you have to bring this fellow here to carry on in front of me like this? Must this man come into my house? David left Gath and escaped to the cave of Adullam. When his brothers and his father's household heard about it, they went down to him there. All those who were in distress or in debt or discontented gathered around him, and he became their commander. About 400 men were with him. From there David went to Mizpah in Moab and said to king of Moab, would you let my father and mother come and stay with you until I learn what God will do for me? So he left them with the king of Moab, and they stayed with him as long as David was in the stronghold. But the prophet Gad said to David, do not stay in the stronghold. Go into the land of Judah. So David left and went to the forest of Hereth. Now Saul heard that David and his men had been discovered, and Saul was seated, spear in hand, under the tamarisk tree on the hill at Gibeah, with all his officials standing by their side. Will you turn off that coffee pot, please? I guess I can do the voice isolation. And Saul was seated, spear in hand, under the tamarisk tree. He said, listen, men of Benjamin, will the son of Jesse give you all the fields and vineyards? Will he make you commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds? Is that why you have all conspired against me? No one even tells me when my son makes a covenant with the son of Jesse, Jonathan. No one is concerned about me or tells me that my son has incited my servant to lie and wait for me. But Doeg the Edomite, who was standing with Saul's officials, said, I saw the son of Jesse come to Ahimelech, son of Ahitub at Nob. Ahimelech inquired of the Lord for him. He also gave him provisions, and he gave him the sword Goliath. Then the king sent for the priest Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, and all the men of his family who were the priests at Nob, and they came to the king. Saul said, listen now, you son of Ahitub. Why have you conspired against me? You and this son of Jesse named David, giving him bread and a sword, and inquired of God for him, so that he has rebelled against me, and now he lies in wait for me as he does today. What a scaredy cat and a hater. Ahimelech answered King Saul, who of all your servants is as loyal to you as David is? The king's son-in-law. He's your own son-in-law. He's captain of your bodyguard and highly respected in your own household. Was this the first time that I inquired of God for him? Of course not. Let not the king accuse your servant and any of his father's family, for your servant knows nothing at all about all this whole affair. Dude. But the king Saul said, You will surely die today, you and your whole family. Then King Saul ordered the guards at his side, turn and go kill the priests of the Lord, because they too have sided with David. They knew he was fleeing from me, and they didn't even come tell me. But all the king's officials were unwilling to raise a hand to strike down the innocent priests of the Lord. Whoa. Then King Saul turned to Doeg, Doeg, you turn and strike down the priests. So Doeg the Edomite turned and struck down them. And that day he killed 85 men, priests, who were wearing the linen ephod. Whoa. He also put to the sword Nob, the town of the priests, and its men that live there, its women, its children, and its infants, and its cattle, and its donkeys, and its sheep. But one of Ahimelech's sons, Ahitub named Abiathar, escaped and fled to join David. He told David that Saul had killed the priests of the Lord. Then David said to Abiathar, that day when Doeg the Edomite was there, I knew he would sure tell Saul, I am responsible for the death of your whole family. Stay with me. Do not be afraid. The man who wants to kill you is trying to kill me too. You will be safe with me.
Man, that's messed up, dude.
Just because Saul was freaking jealous and scared of David, because he was jealous and suspicious of him, he freaking killed his whole family.
Wow.
Kind of going through a similar situation in a way. I won't tell you all about, but whenever there's some jealousy and spirit of suspicion and fear going on in my family, please pray for all the members of my family, and y'all will be praying for the person that's affected by it. Okay. Chapter 23. Whenever David was told, look, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah and looting the threshing floors, he inquired of the Lord and said, shall I go to attack these Philistines? And the Lord answered him, go, attack the Philistines and save Keilah. But David's men said to him, here in Judah we are afraid. How much more then if we go to Keilah against the Philistine forces? Once again David inquired of the Lord, and the Lord answered him, go down to Keilah, for I'm going to give you the hand of the Philistines into your hands. So David and his men went to Keilah and fought the Philistines and carried off their livestock. He inflicted heavy losses on the Philistines and saved the people of Keilah. Saul was told that David had gone down to Keilah and said, God has delivered him into my hands. For David has imprisoned himself by entering a town with gates and bars. And Saul called up all his forces to go to battle, to go down to Keilah and besiege David and his men. When David learned